Hey everyone, it's George LaRocque at WorkTech, and we've got a bunch of industry news from one source today. I am joined by Shane Kovalsky, the co-founder and CEO of Mystery, and we've got several things to talk about. We're going to learn about Mystery. We're going to learn about some interesting things that are happening to the business around, let's say, the brand. We're going to learn about an acquisition that's taken place and some cool things that are happening in the product. Welcome, Shane.
Well, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to meet you. And let's just start with introductions. If you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and about Mystery. I know that you're a employee engagement platform built for the distributed workforce, distributed world. But what does that mean? What do you guys do? And tell everyone a little about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Shane, founder and CEO at Mystery. Mystery is about a 4-year-old company. Before that, I worked at a couple different startups, ranging from marketplaces to actually working in freight for a little while, and held roles all over, everything from operations managers to sales to marketing to engineering to product management to being in the people function for a little bit, which is how we eventually stumbled back into this and are working in the category now. But we started Mystery. Mystery is the best place to help you understand connections and engagement at work, and then do something about it automatically. So we're taking the best and latest from data science and AI and trying to turn people science and take the best of that and turn it into data science for team management leaders. So what that means is that we help you understand who is connected at your team, both at an individual and a team level, who could be connected, meaning like who are the people that if they had the chance to meet, they would be absolute best friends. And then who should be connected. As a people leader, you're often looking at metrics like cross-team cohesion, connection to leadership, sense of belonging, things along those lines. And our platform helps you understand those connections. And then, like I mentioned, the best part is actually take action about it. So originally we started with just virtual team events as the way to take action. Now we're extending that all the way through to connected one-on-ones. Think like Donut a little bit, but if Donut knew who should be connected, who is connected, and actually provided the content to make that meeting a little bit more engaging, all the way through to things like offsites. So we help people leaders, boost retention through connection and get the most out of their morale budget, which in these times is becoming exceedingly more important.
Yeah. So, at WorkTech, we talk a lot about how, it's all about the data and it's all about, insights that you glean from it and the connectivity, not just with, people systems, but, systems of work and collaboration. So how are you, where does that data come from for you? How do you see those connections or understand the could should connections? How do you get that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, it's a good question. Originally, when we first started, like I mentioned, we were just doing virtual events, and we were asking the question, how do we make our virtual events as high ROI as they can possibly be? We had virtual events that people really liked. We had virtual events that people kept booking, and they were super easy to book. But we were trying to understand, like, how can we make these things actually move the needle on engagement? And maybe the obvious answer back then, and this is years ago now, we started looking at engagement surveys. We started looking at surveys from companies like Lattice and Culture Amps 15.5, who are amazing products in their own right. And we started looking and saying, okay, well, cross-team cohesion for the product org looks like a problem, and maybe connection to leadership on the operations team needs to be improved. And we started building what we call tactical engagement plans, which are like, okay, if you have these problems, we're going to build an event plan where we're going to invite these teams and these leaders, and we're going to bond over this content. And what we found was, we'd go through all this effort of, the survey would happen, we'd get the survey data from the customers, we'd build this plan, and about a month in, the plan was completely useless. The problems had changed. Connection to leadership in those orgs no longer mattered. Cross team, they had actually bonded, right? You had made the input. And most teams do surveys on a biannual basis. So we realized we needed a better solution. And that's when we started working to build a much more robust and real data set, in a technical term, going from surveying, monitoring to observability. So we started looking at all the tools employees use every day, things like Slack data, things like calendar data, Teams, Zoom, all the places that people are interacting with all the time. There are troves of data within there. The question is, how do you actually get access and use it in a meaningful way? So we, like I mentioned, a big part of what Mystery does is bring people science into data science. So through some of the more cutting edge versions of NLP and AI, we take all of those insights and provide real-time engagement scores and connection scores across an entire company. So that helps you understand, like I mentioned, who is connected currently. And that can be, as frequently as every day, we can show you what those metrics look like.
Yep.
Most customers don't need every day. It's more of a monthly score.
Right.
And we can help show how that changes over time. And the reality is, teams may be static, but employees are constantly going up and down in employee engagement. And our goal, when we think about what we can do with this data, is we can see all those early signs that someone might be disengaged, all the early signs that looks like this employee might be on their way towards being more disengaged, and then take action immediately. Being able to automate the interaction from, looks like maybe we'll pick up on a signal like an employee is accepting calendar invites much later than they normally are. It's a super random specific one, but as soon as we see that, we can make sure that a targeted one-on-one gets triggered with that leader, and we can provide them an opportunity not just to bond individually with that leader, but for that leader to reconnect them to the mission, for that leader to re-energize that employee, or maybe even just help that employee find some other really great connections in their org or across the org. Sorry, that was a long, random answer to your question, but
That was great.
useful.
That was great. It's I think it's really interesting what you're doing, and not being dependent on surveys. I think a lot of folks are exhausted by we've got survey exhaustion. And I think the ability to not wait until you've got somebody who's disengaged, but see a trend and give a leader the opportunity to check in and give them some insights to help with the conversation. I think that's really helpful. And that is this emerging work tech category, leveraging people data and work data, business data. That's key. So
Totally.
I love it. Now I want to make sure that we get to your news. I could geek out on engagement and culture for an hour, but so I was a little mysterious, pun intended, with the first bit of news. I'll let you go ahead and break it because it's an interesting. I said it had to do about the brand. So do you want to share what the first bit is?
Absolutely, yeah. Super exciting news. We are officially changing the name of the company, which is a little bit heartbreaking for me. You get very attached to a name and a baby, but one that makes all the sense in the world. And I'd love to talk a little bit about kind of why we're changing the name and how we even got there. The new name is Glue, by the way, in case I didn't get there. We're the glue that keeps the team together. We help your best people stick around. Obviously, for us, retention is really important, and we love a good pun. But it's funny, we were described as the glue that kept teams together by so many customers. We just decided that feels like a much more resonant name than Mystery ever was. And Mystery, it was a good name and it served us well. And we were called Mystery originally because our team, the original team, when we started building this category, like I mentioned, we were doing virtual events. And when you think about experience design and what's going to create a really amazing experience that people actually want to go to, that's a very big key in distributed work. You need to provide experiences that employees actually enjoy and is not a forced thing. We talk HR tech, and the space talks a lot about how do you make sure employees are excited? How do you get the alignment where the employees are actually engaged in the surveys, in the tech that you're using? It starts with building something that actually just sounds fun. So Mystery, for that word, sounds fun, right? It's you're going to join a mystery event. The actual psychology of not knowing what an experience was before you get there is really, really impactful, both to not setting up expectations prior to getting there, not having some, I'm going to go and do this event like forced fun, like this is going to kind of suck. The name really served to provide you some spontaneity, some excitement back into virtual events. But I think, like I was mentioning, we started with just virtual events. We went on this journey of making them amazing, making them really easy for customers. But once we got to this hurdle of like, okay, are these working? And we found out they weren't way back in 2021. We started saying, okay, like you mentioned, what is all the data that we can use to make these things useful? And as we did that, we realized that we actually collected a much more interesting product that helped people understand their company, which is a much bigger problem than just booking a couple of virtual events, and do something about it. So that we took the same level of functionality. How we boosted ROI for the virtual events, which we actually did by close to 2 orders of magnitude. A virtual event effectiveness went up by 20x after we started
Wow.
incorporating some of these methodologies. And we've taken that to things like offsites, things like one-on-ones, to be able to make them more and more impactful, more ROI generative from an employee engagement perspective. So as we made that transition, as we realized, the primary product we're selling to customers today is our understanding platform and our ability to act. The name mystery didn't really fit. We had a lot of questions they were like, so my connection graph isn't a mystery anymore. I get it. Like you're telling me. And I was like, this isn't exactly the name that we hope to get. So we're really excited to reposition the company. We're a software first business now. And Glue just feels so much more aligned with where we're going.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great name, and one you can clearly have a lot of fun with. And as we're having this conversation, you'll be announcing it. So I can't wait to see what you're going to do with the brand. I can imagine it'll be fun.
Yeah.
So the second bit of news, the second and third are really sort of related, but you've made an acquisition that is going to contribute to the product side. So what's the acquisition?
Yeah, super excited about that. So I guess as I go into that announcement, like I mentioned before, we started with just virtual events, and then we started trying to say, hey, that's one of the tools that a people leader, a team management org leader uses to engage their team, but there are many others: targeted introductions, offsites, coffee chats, lunch and learns, all sorts of other things. We wanted to extend that and understand how can we be useful on all actions that people take. And as we did that, we realized, man, a lot of these other avenues, like a targeted one-on-one is a great example, even when you get there, we weren't meeting the bar for employees actually enjoying it. If you get a random introduction to an employee and you're sitting in a Zoom room and you've never met them, I'm like, okay, you're like watching the clock, like when is this meeting over so I can get out of this, right? So we acquired a company called PopStage. They are basically think about it kind of like a UI that sits on top of Zoom, and makes it so you're actually tailoring this experience. Like you and I right now are talking on Zoom, and it's kind of these two boxes. Imagine if on the bottom line you had kind of a command center that was helping you understand, hey, what are the things that you guys have in common? Hey, you guys both like these games. Maybe you can just click and play something if the tension builds. Hey, maybe you can ask a bot about all the different things this person works on, who they know in the org, so you
Oh,
can
wow.
feel and kind of have a personal relationship expert sitting right there with you in the Zoom. And so we acquired the company called PopStage. We're going to be introducing that, and it's also for us a really valuable data set. So we take all sorts of anonymized interactions from Zoom, whether it be the transcript or even in a team meeting or a virtual event. Each employee lighting up when somebody else talks is a great example of how much they know each other. If the camera's off, if the camera's on, all these little tiny interactions, being able to incorporate that into our connection algorithms, into our understanding of how people are doing at work, was really, really vital. So it kind of adds the video and Zoom feature to our data set of understanding, and helps us extend and create meaningful moments where we're not going to use Zoom for everything, of course, and even targeted one-on-ones could be on Zoom. They could be in front of a computer, or they could be like on a walk. We take all those things into preferences, but making every interaction so important for us that when an employee is being acted upon to build engagement, they have to enjoy it. They have to have fun, and this acquisition is really going to help make this digital sphere of connecting much more connective, much more easy to kind of jump into.
Yeah. Well, one of the core tenets of WorkTech we've put out is about being in the flow of work, and whether that's your interface or whether that's providing value to the employee when they need it. And I mean, I spent so much time on Zoom now. I've sort of been waiting for some WorkTech to really leverage it, and there's so many opportunities here. So I can't wait to see what that looks like too. Now, from what I understand, you've got some other exciting product announcements coming out, and it's everyone's favorite technology to talk about, or some of it's rooted in AI. Talking so much about that lately.
Yeah.
How are you
Big
leveraging?
buzzword these
Yeah,
days.
yeah,
Yeah. So talking about how we leverage AI, I think for a lot of the listeners, and I'll speak for myself, even in this industry. I'm an engineer. I dropped out of school for engineering to work at a startup, but I have a really good technical background. And even when I hear some people be like, "Oh, we're bringing AI to a product," I'm like, what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
how does that even work? And I understand all the foundational. I have a good grasp on the technology. So when we think about what we're doing and the big announcements in product, for us, it was about making this transition from being kind of an analytics tool for an event business to being front and center in a tool to understand your people and take action. So we use AI across a huge stack of everything from NLP, which is called natural language processing, everything from like reading the titles of meetings all the way through to understanding conversations in public Slack channels and understanding who's reacting, who's commenting. What are all the early signals that somebody is either A, connected or B, engaged or starting to move in the other direction across all these metrics that matter, like connection to leadership and sense of belonging. We train models that look at retention metrics and look for those signals in the collaboration tools that exist today, and then provide not just the understanding for a people leader, but we take that AI all the way through to even if we're in a meeting together, what are the things that we could bond over? So we're able to look at calendar data, Slack data to understand interests as a very basic sense. Maybe you're both in the dogs channel, and we can actually like pull up the name of the dog and say, hey, like, you have a dog, and they're also named. This is a dumb example, but Winnie, like whatever it is. We're able to bring all that stuff together to assist these people in actually bonding real time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's, it's AI for good, right? It's about connection and it's about helping
Yeah.
because, leaders are notoriously not great at those connections. I mean, when you have one that is good at it, it stands out. So, we need all the tools we can to help,
Yeah.
improve leadership. So, well, those are three
Absolutely.
exciting announcements. And how can people learn more? What's the new website or should they
Yeah. The
just
new
go to the old?
website. Yeah, no, don't go to the old website. Go to the new one. It's glue.co. So glue, just like you'd think glue would be spelled GLUE
All right.
.co. And yeah, we're super excited to take new calls, to show demos, just to give people an idea of even what the connections at their company could be. We have this really exciting new thing that we're calling. Maybe we'll get a better thing. We call it Glue Score internally right now, but we can actually benchmark you and understand, hey, what is the potential for connection at your company? Within even a week of working with us, we can say, hey, here's
Oh,
where you are today, here's where you could be. And so it's a really exciting way of understanding the potential for people at your company. So often people leaders today are talking about retention all the time.
right.
And when you think about, why do people stay at companies? We think about it in kind of a way that where there's three reasons people stay at companies. Number one is their comp's really good, and people leaders have some level of adjustment there, but we live in capitalism. We're not going to be able to change comp too much. The number two is a connection to mission, which certainly that can always be reinforced. That can always be embedded within the culture. But when you hire someone, they're either going to be very mission aligned to what you're doing, or they're not. Hopefully they are. So we don't feel like there's a ton of wiggle room that you can do outside of reinforcement, which is really, really important. The last one that reasons why people say they stay at their companies, they just love the people. Well, distributed work, it's become much harder to fall in love with the people that you work with. And if you're thinking about, hey, how do I do that in distributed work? We'd love to talk to you. It's what we breathe, live and breathe every single day. And I think there's just so many misconceptions about connection and distributed work. People think it's impossible. People think, oh, like the young people will never be connected in this way. And like maybe it's just parents that want to be this way. I it is mind blowing how the data does not map to the reality that people think, that all these narratives that exist.
Yeah.
Every company can be connected in a distributed form, whether it's hybrid, 2 days a week or fully remote. There's so many things that a people leader can do to engage their team and create connection.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. And just my personal experience, I was just commenting with someone the other day that I've been in the industry over 30 years. I've had big teams. I've had, over 100 people reporting up.
Yeah.
I've had small teams. I've been remote for like 27 out of 30. And
Oh,
the
wow.
narrative is it's what you choose, right? It doesn't mean you have to make effort and you have to think harder about, when and where you connect a little bit, but I think it's
Yeah.
the
Ooh.
narrative you choose.
that piece is such an important one. We so often have the frame at Glue. I've got to get used to saying at Glue, not at Mystery. That employee engagement in office is opt out, meaning like if you show up to the office, you're naturally going to show and pretend like you're engaged, at least at the very bare minimum. Remote work is opt in, right? Natural case is you're disengaged. So you need to give employees something they want to do to actually opt in. You need to figure out how to build a connection culture that is make sure employees want to opt in and not forcibly opt out. And I think when you think about employee engagement, the way it's going to change over the coming decades, it's going to be really about figuring out a system for distributed work that not as just obviously an opt-in, but gets back to what an office was, which is like, hey, obviously this is somewhere I want to be and work every day, and not like, oh God, I gotta click Zoom and I gotta fix my background and I gotta do all this stuff to be able to connect and bond, and I gotta sit in this awkward thing. We need to find ways of meeting employees where they are and finding a solution for them that's designed for them and not just designed to boost engagement metrics.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Shane, this was great. I could go on and on. Like I said, I could, geek out about this stuff for a long time, but thank you for coming to WorkTech to tell your story and to share your news. It was a pleasure meeting you, and well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks everybody for watching or listening.